Hey everybody, Dr. Joe's in the house on this nice and wonderful day, Wednesday. Another session of Wealth Wednesday, and today we're going to do a little bit something different, a bit more academic, but I think it's very important. And let me get the folks on Instagram on first before we get that going. And I think Instagram is on. Okay, yes, so we're good. So today we're going to talk about financial freedom, which is, I think, what a lot of people are looking for, and that's one of the main reasons why they get into real estate, is to achieve financial independence. But there are different levels of getting there, from when you first start to when you ultimately get to the finish line, if you want to call it that. And so today we're going to kind of talk about the different levels of financial freedom, depending on where you are, all the way through to hopefully the day that you get what you're looking for. So I've titled this From Cash Flow to Freedom, and it's what level are you? And we all start at different levels. Most of us start with basically ground zero, where we're just trying to struggle without how much money. We got maybe some debt. Maybe got some challenges. Maybe we have a job, and we have some sources of income. Maybe do some, I don't know, side hustles or whatever it is. So we start there, and over time we go through different stages. And so today I'm going to talk about the 6 levels of financial freedom, and then you can decide where you are and what level you're striving for and what makes the most sense for you. Okay, so from cash flow to freedom, what levels are you? And I'll start off by saying, are you building a portfolio, which many of us are, but why? Why are you doing that? And what if you spend years, buying rental properties, collecting rent, managing tenants, handling repairs, taking on debt, taking on risk, only to discover that you're just busier and not really any more financially free? Okay, a lot of us are in that. We're just buying stuff and not really, don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's really one of the most uncomfortable realities of residential real estate investing. Investors obviously were encouraged to acquire more doors, increase rental income, and build equity. But those numbers alone do not tell you whether you are actually becoming financially independent. Financial independent, it's got somewhat relation to the number of properties you have, but not necessarily. You can have people with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 doors. But maybe they could accomplish the same thing with a fewer number of doors. So 10 properties, for example, with thin margins, high leverage, inadequate reserves, and constant management demands, may seem, in my opinion, may seem less freedom than, say, you have 4 carefully, selected properties producing strong, dependable cash flow. Because I know I went through that. When I was first starting, I was just buying stuff. I really didn't have a buy box, as they call it. I didn't have a criteria. I was just buying stuff because it was a quote unquote a good deal. And looking back now, I probably could have accomplished the same with fewer, better quality deals or better quality properties. And what I mean by better quality properties, I'm talking about properties in better locations, different amenities in the home, and so on. So it's not necessarily the number of doors that you have, the number of properties you have that's important. I think it's not so much quantity. In my opinion, is quality as well. So financial freedom is better understood as a progression rather than a finish line, in my opinion. And so for residential investors, that progression is going to go through 6 steps, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Financial stability, which is level 1. Property self-sufficiency, which is level 2. Financial security, level 3. Financial flexibility, 4. Financial independence, 5, and financial abundance and legacy, number 6. Okay, so each level represents a different relationship between your properties, your personal finances, your debt, and ultimately your time. The objective is not simply to rush through different levels. No, it's to build each other strongly that you have a good solid foundation so which you can build on. So the experiences of successful and unsuccessful investors, I think, we're going to talk about it today. So let's talk about these different levels and get the show on the road. Okay, so number one, or level one, is financial stability. Can you survive before you try to scale? Can you survive before you even trying to scale? Before you start buying 1, 2, 3, 4, can you actually survive the way you are right now? Okay, so the question is, what happens to your investments, investment strategy when one vacancy, major repair, unexpected personal expense can wipe out your available cash? Okay, so what's going to happen if you just don't have that stability and something can happen unforeseen, unexpected, that can wipe you out? So financial stability is the foundation upon which all the other levels kind of build on. At this level, the investor's first priority not should be to maximize the number of properties, in my opinion. It should be creating enough financial strength to absorb normal setbacks without immediately turning to credit cards, expensive short-term financing, or emergency property sales. So it's really about that. It's having enough stability, reserves, I suppose, so that way something unforeseen doesn't take you out. So it should be creating enough financial, these things. Personal finances and investment finances are closely connected, particularly during the early stages of portfolio building. So one of the recurring mistakes that a lot of new investors have is access to financing with the stability to afford risk. A lender may, just because you can get financing, doesn't necessarily mean you should take it. There could be some terms to that financing which may be not good. It could be short-term financing, it could be a high interest rate, it could be balloon payments, it could be a whole bunch of different things. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should take that loan. So investors, in my opinion, who successfully navigate, especially during the early years, tend to maintain liquidity. You got some money in reserves. They control consumer debt. Don't take on high interest rate, credit card and those kind of things. They protect their credit. They insure properly, get the right insurance, and resist using every available dollar for down payment. So they have some money left over, not just sort of use everything that they got just to get the down payment, because you can get the down payment monies together, you can close on the loan, but something happens, as I said before, it can be a very, very tough road. So cash sitting in reserve account may seem unproductive to most people during the good times, but it becomes extraordinarily valuable when a tenant unexpectedly leaves or a major system fails. It's good to have some reserves because stuff happens. And, and I've seen that many, many times. In fact, it's happened to me as well. Especially during the early days, I just didn't have much in reserves. I was just sort of, whatever I got, I used to, recycle the funds and so on. So the bad side of this stage is that stability can feel slow. You can watch other people, they're buying stuff, and here's you, just sort of slowly building your reserves. It's not sexy. But but again, it's okay. It's not a race. It takes time. It's a slow process to do this right, and it's always good to have liquidity. It's good to have minimize your risk and don't take on too much risk. So some investors grow quickly because their financial circumstances can support it. They've got all those things, so that's okay. Others simply just take on more risk. And those situations can look identical on social media. Everyone's all splashing on social media, looking good, looking sexy, and so on. But the ugly version appears when several problems occur at the same time. And I've seen this. I recall, a vacancy on one of my properties, and a tenant left, and, the HVAC system went out. I had to change the roof. All these things happen. It's like a rainy day. So individually, each of these problems might seem unmanageable, but the problem is that combined, they can create a liquidity crisis. Financial stability is what keeps an inconvenience from becoming an emergency. Okay, so that's what I say. The first level is financial stability, having the reserves such that you can handle anything that comes out of the blue, a curveball. Not anything, but unforeseen things for the most part. Okay, that's level one. So I think what I'm saying here is that the first thing you want to do is to establish that financial stability, have some reserves set aside from which you can take on these unknowns that may occur. That's level one. Level two, let's have a look. Where's level two? Level two is here. Property self-sufficiency. Do your properties really pay for themselves? Self-sufficiency. Do they pay for themselves? The question is, if your rental income covers the mortgage, but you regularly use your personal money for repairs, vacancies, and replacements, is the property actually cash flowing? Okay. So what we're saying here is that, yeah, your income covers a mortgage, but you got other expenses that may not be taken care of from the rent. And therefore you have to dip into your personal funds in order to keep things going. So a self-sufficient property should generate enough revenue to support its reasonable operating cost over time. There's enough money whereby the property pays for itself. It supports itself. That means looking beyond the mortgage payment, looking at things like taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancies, property management, utilities, licensing, turnover expenses, long-term capital expenditures, all those things, in addition to the mortgage, should be coming in from the rent, okay, to take care of that. That will allow the property to essentially manage itself, if that makes sense. Okay, so a property that produces, let's say, $500 per month after all mortgages, after the mortgage is paid, but routinely requires thousands of dollars for, in expenses, it's not self-sufficient. Okay, it's not producing enough to support itself. Successful investors learn to distinguish gross rent, okay, from usable cash flow. Gross rent from usable cash flow. If a property collects, let's say, $3,000 a month, that does not mean the investor has created $3,000 of passive income. No. Nor is the difference between the rent and the mortgage automatically profit. No. The more accurate question is, what remains after the property has paid its reasonable share of both today's expenses and tomorrow's predictable expenses? So it's, does the asset take care of today's expenses, and we set aside some funds for a rainy day for tomorrow? The bad news is that, you have to factor these things in, and it can make a property less sexy, less glamorous, less attractive. However, it's important to allocate sufficient monies for unknowns like vacancies, capital expenses, and so on. So, this is part of the due diligence that you go through when you first decide whether to purchase this property. And also it helps you decide how much to set aside for a rainy day through reserves. So the ugly situation is that, if you don't have enough money coming in from the property, or your expenses are too high, then you're going to have to dip into your personal fund. So the asset itself is not self-sufficient. Okay. So really, self-sufficiency, or level two, is when all your assets, or one asset, or your portfolio, can support itself. Okay, so that's number two, level two. And it takes time to get there, especially during the early days. But over time, as you pay off, as you increase rents, as you implement systems to reduce expenses, then over time, they can sustain itself. So let's go to number three, level three, financial security. Okay, so we talked about level one, which was the financial stability. Level two, we talked about self-sufficiency of the property. And level three is financial security. Financial security. Could your portfolio cover the essentials? Now, looking more at the portfolio levels now. So the question is, if your paycheck disappeared tomorrow, how much of your household essential expenses could your real estate portfolio reliably cover? Okay, so if you had no job, or if your income, your paycheck, your regular source of funds was, I don't know, disappeared or took a hit, then could your real estate portfolio sustain you and your family? We're talking about financial security, okay? So financial security begins when the investment income starts doing more than just sustaining the property. It actually starts sustaining you, sustaining the investor. Okay, there's money, enough money left over after all the expenses, whereby you can now start having the assets or the income, sustain you. Okay, so this does not necessarily mean that the work becomes optional. It doesn't mean you should quit your job. No. Instead, the portfolio produces enough dependable income to cover a meaningful portion or eventually all of your life's essential expenses. Things like housing, food, transportation, utilities, insurance, and other necessities. Suppose an investor essentials household has an income of $5,000 a month. That's how much that's the average expenses for this household. And the portfolio produces $5,000 of spendable monthly cash flow, okay, after appropriate allocations for expenses and reserves. That investor, has reached a different position because now he needs $5,000 to survive or to live off, and the assets portfolio is generating $5,000. So it's a different position now this person is in. So then compared to somebody else who has got a lifestyle, they need $10,000, and their portfolio generates $5,000, for example. So what I'm saying is that the property count is not the key thing. It's your coverage of expenses. So successful investors at this stage become more selective. The objective is not sort of just buying stuff. You have to control your expenses. Okay, keep on shifting up your lifestyle, because obviously if you keep on doing that, which is okay, then it means that you move in the goalposts even further. So instead of having 5,000 you need, now if you have your expenses of 10,000, then obviously you're going to need to increase your portfolio until you get to that 10,000 level. So so you can do things like strategically refinance, get reduced interest rates on your properties. You can reduce expensive debt. You can increase rents. You can reduce unnecessary operating expenses. You can replace weak assets with stronger ones, or you can acquire more cash flowing properties. The ugly trap, though, is lifestyle inflation. This is where I just mentioned before. As your income or your net worth rises, then your spending also increases with it. So instead of now needing $5,000, you now need $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 a month. Essentially, your lifestyle has increased. And so your financial independence finish line then moves further and further away while your portfolio grows. So that's where you have a situation where somebody can earn $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, but still be essentially broke and living on paycheck to paycheck because their expenses are so high, even though they have a very high salary. So that's number 3. It's the level where you have financial security. This is when your portfolio can sustain you and also cover all your expenses, and therefore you have more options. So I'm kind of halfway through. Again, if you've got some questions, please put them in the chat box. I'll get to them in about 5-10 minutes. Anything to do with real estate. If you want to do a one-on-one with me, go to my website, joeasimo.com, and we can do a one-on-one schedule there. Okay, so let's move on to number 4, level 4, financial flexibility. Is your portfolio giving you more choices? Okay, that's financial flexibility now. It's all about choices. So the question is, what is the value of building wealth if you still cannot afford to say no to a job, a client, a deal, or an obligation you really don't want to do. Okay, so financial flexibility, which is level 4, is where investors begin experiencing one of wealth's most valuable benefits, which is choice. Your portfolio may not yet completely replace all your income, but it kind of produces enough income and financial strength that every decision now you can make doesn't depend on your next paycheck. You now have choices. You can reduce your working hours. You can change your career. You can start a business. You can spend more time with family. You can do more travel, or you can be more selective. Okay, this is where we are now at level 4, financial flexibility. So imagine someone whose desired lifestyle costs $8,000 per month, and whose properties portfolio generates, let's say, $5,500 a month. So they need $8,000 a month for their lifestyle, and their portfolio produces, let's say, $5,500. So it's not all. So technically, the investor hasn't reached complete financial independence, but it's almost 2/3 there. Okay, so this creates options for this person unavailable to somebody who required every dollar, up from their employment. Okay, so the bad side is that flexibility is what tempts investors to declare early. Okay, so although they need 8, they're at 5,500, so they say, to hell with it, let me just quit my job. They're not there yet, and so they're not in that position. So be careful about making these decisions too early. You need strong cash flow. You need reliable cash flow, and that's the reason why I go do Section 8, because it's a very, very reliable income stream, and it's not the same. So investors who are approaching financial independence should generally become more, not less, but more interested in things like reserves, diversification, debt structure, insurance, and risk management. The ugly outcomes is that you want to limit your leverage, because leverage can double-edged sword. It can expand your portfolio, but also it can take you out if you run through difficult times. So freedom requires enough margin that the investor can make decisions rather than having creditors, emergencies, and monthly obligations make those decisions for them. That's number 4. Let's go to number 5, and then we'll wrap it up at number 6. So number 5 is financial independence. When does work become optional? When does work become optional? And that's what we talk about, is financial independence. If you stop working today, could your portfolio support your lifestyle through good years and bad ones without forcing you to sell any assets? That's what we talk about, financial independence. So here, financial independence is a milestone which most investors are looking for, they're striving for. That's what we call financial freedom for a lot of people. Sustainable investments income can support both the investor's chosen lifestyle without requiring employment income. You can quit your job, you can leave your employment. Importantly, financial independence does not mean investor stops working. Okay, some people do, but you don't have to. Many financially independent people, they continue working, they continue investing, they operate their businesses, or even manage properties because they enjoy doing it. They enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy, manage my properties. I enjoy managing my portfolio. I really do. The difference is that work becomes a choice rather than a financial requirement. This is why every investor needs a financial freedom number. Okay, what is that number for you? If your desired lifestyle requires $10,000 a month, for example, your target cannot just simply be $10,000 gross rent. It's got to be more than that. You need sufficient sustainable portfolio income after operating expenses, debt service, reserves, taxes, and where applicable, and reasonable allowances for future property needs. So you want a margin there. So adding a margin of safety can make the difference. Can make your financial independence a lot more reliable, in other words. Okay, so successful investors approaching this stage often shift from accumulation mindset more to optimization. Paying down selected mortgages may produce better risk-adjusted results than purchasing another property. Selling a management-intensive or low-performing property might improve both the cash flow and the quality of life. Hiring a professional management might reduce current income somewhat, but it can dramatically increase your time freedom. Okay, so the best decision becomes the one that serves the investor the most. Okay, it serves your objectives, and not necessarily the number of doors that you have. So the ugly version of financial independence is reaching it only on paper. A portfolio might have millions of dollars in equity while producing insufficient spendable income. Conversely, a heavily leveraged property may expose you to market risk and so on. So the true independence requires balance of income, equity, liquidity, debt, risk, and time. Okay, and finally, level 6, which is financial abundance and legacy. What happens after you have enough? What happens after you have enough? That's a good one. Question: once your portfolio can comfortably support your lifestyle, will you keep accumulating simply for the sake of owning more, or will your wealth begin serving a larger purpose? Okay, so what happens when your income from your portfolio is more than enough that you need? Okay, so what are you going to do then? So financial abundance begins when investment income and assets are meaningfully exceed what is required to support the investor's chosen lifestyle. So at that point, the conversation changes. Instead of asking, how do I become financially independent? The investor can begin asking the question, what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want this wealth to accomplish? So some investors continue acquiring more properties, which is okay. Others focus on things like eliminating debt, increasing passive income, helping children or grandchildren, either supporting a charitable cause or mentoring new investors or establishing estate and succession plans. So the common denominator is that capital no longer becomes, it's no longer being accumulated solely for the sake of personal needs. Wealth becomes exceeding beyond the investor. There's still some risk though. A larger portfolio can create unnecessary complexity. More entities, more loans, properties, insurance policies, employees, contractors, tax consider. It can get complicated if you have a large portfolio, and it can create administrative burdens. However, I think successful investors recognize that more is not always better. That's something I've realized. I don't need to buy more houses. Enough is enough. Okay, a streamlined portfolio of high quality assets can sometimes provide more freedom and legacy than a large portfolio. So again, I think quality trumps quantity. I'd rather have a fewer number of quality properties than a boatload of, not so good properties. And so, so wealth exists, it's possible, but you have to have a succession plan. Poor documentation, unclear ownership, deferred maintenance, unresolved tax considerations, it can cause problems. It can transform an inheritance into a burden. Building generational wealth, therefore, requires more than acquiring assets. It requires preparing those assets and the people who may eventually receive them for the future. So in conclusion, let's wrap it up here. 7:30. Stop counting and start measuring freedom. Stop counting doors and start measuring freedom. The real estate industry celebrates acquisitions. Yeah, we do. People pound on the chest. Another closing makes great photographs. Another property increases the door count. Higher rents and rising valuations create impressive numbers. But none of these measurements by themselves answer the fundamental question, which is your real estate portfolio improving your life? Is it? Is your real estate portfolio improving your life? That's the fundamental question. We've talked about 6 levels today, different ways to measure that. We talked about financial stability, property self-sufficiency, financial security, financial flexibility, financial independence, and then finally, financial abundance and legacy. At the beginning, the investor is trying to become financially resilient. Okay. Then the properties learn to support themselves. Eventually, the portfolio starts supporting the investor, which is where we want to be. As cash flow grows and dependence on earned income declines, the investor gains more flexibility. So when sustainable investment income can support the desired lifestyle, then work becomes optional. Beyond that point, wealth can begin serving family, community, charitable, and legacy objectives. So the good, bad, and ugly experience of other investors remind us that there are no perfectly straight lines to this. It goes up and down. It goes through curves and twists and things like that. So as I said before, stuff happens. Vacancies occur, bad acquisitions account, financing becomes challenging, market downturn. So, you always have to be constantly monitoring your portfolio and making adjustments as necessary. So successful investing does not mean avoiding every mistake. No, it means creating enough financial margin, discipline, knowledge, and adaptability to survive mistakes and continue moving forward. Perhaps the most dangerous investor is not the person who knows where or knows they are struggling. It's the investor who appears successful but has never examined what lies beneath the portfolio. They haven't done the due diligence. They haven't done the, risk assessments and things like that. High equity can conceal poor liquidity. High rents can conceal weak cash flow. Rapid acquisitions can conceal excessive leverage. And a large portfolio can sometimes conceal the uncomfortable reality that the investor has created another demanding job rather than financial freedom. So the question is, what level are you? It matters. Once you know where you are, you can determine what the next level requires. For one investor, the answer is maybe buying more property, buy another property. For another, it may be increasing reserves, improving rents, paying down debt, selling an underperforming asset, strengthening insurance, or simply refusing the next mediocre deal. So again, everyone's different. So don't simply ask how many properties you can acquire. Ask how much security will those properties create. Don't simply measure how much rent you collect. Measure how sustainable that cash flow you have and what it's going to take to keep it. Don't simply calculate your net worth. Measure your choices. So because ultimately, the best real estate portfolio isn't necessarily the biggest ones. It is the one that gives you the life, the choices, security, and freedom you built to provide. So there, my friends, is today's education part. Again, I know it's a little bit academic, but I think it's important for us to understand the different levels of financial cash flow and on this journey that we're all pursuing. So let's get down to questions and see what we got here in the comments. Again, if you got some questions, please put them in the chat box. And if you want to shoot me do a one-on-one, you can always go to my website, www.joeasamoah.com, www.joeasamoah.com, and see if I put it up here. And if you want to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email at joe@joeasamoah.com, joe@joeasamoah.com. Again, I'll just put my website here if you do one-on-one. I will be traveling next week. I'm going off to, where am I going? I'm going to Honduras, Belize, and Mexico. So going to Central America for a week. And so I will not be here next Wednesday. So we'll have a recorded session. And take a little R&R. And looking forward to that trip. I haven't been to these. I've been to Mexico, but I haven't been to Belize and Honduras. So looking forward to that. So I'll be gone for a week. And looking forward to it. Okay, let's have a look what we got here. Greetings from Phoenix. Hey, Dautu, be doing well in sunny Phoenix. And Nesta Cam, I still haven't found a good tenant to rent. It's been 12 months. Oh my goodness. Calls are slowing down now that we are reaching the end of summer. Oh my goodness. 12 months without a tenant? Wow, something's going on here. Let's have a look. I've been getting calls all year long. However, when I run background checks, a lot of tenants don't pass the requirements. I refuse to rent to anyone just for the money. Well, let's have a look at your criteria that you're doing. If a property has been sitting vacant for a year, something fundamentally is going wrong. I think we need to understand what it is. My experience, properties don't rent for 3 reasons. One, the neighborhood, the location, the area where the property is. So, that could be an issue. Obviously, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't change the location of your property, but it does. It can sometimes, it could be a big factor. The second reason why a lot of rental properties don't rent is because the house itself is not desirable. Again, I'm not familiar with your house, Mr. Khan, but if there's anything you can do to the house to improve it, to make it a bit more, pleasant or desirable, it may be worthwhile to consider that. The third thing is the landlord. Some tenants, they want a good landlord to rent from. I think most tenants do. So, and that could be, again, when you have conversation with the tenants, how you come across. Are you friendly? Are you warm? Are you joking? Are you pleasant? Or are you very strict and and cold and things like that? I mean, that has a factor in whether people want to rent from you. Or it could be the rent is just too high. So you may want to consider that. Look at the rent that you're asking for and see if it's competitive. You may have to reduce the rent a little bit to make it a bit more attractive. That could be something. Otherwise, you can offer incentives, maybe reduce the the deposit requirements. You can rent promotions. You can have promotions. Maybe it could be the marketing. Maybe it could be, the photographs. I stage my homes to make it look like a home versus an empty house. Maybe it could be the photographs that you're taking. It doesn't present the property in its best light. There could be a lot of reasons why, but if you're getting calls and you're not accepting, or none of them have qualified, then I'd suggest that you dig further into that. Is it because your selection standards or your criteria is just too high for the location that you're in? I can raise the bar where I am because I have a property that's in high demand and low supply. So I can raise the bar. If I have a property that, there's a lot of competition, and my property doesn't stand out, then I may have to look at my criteria and see if there's something I can do there. I'm not saying lower it to the point whereby you just take anybody, but maybe you may find somebody. So the question then becomes, how do you turn? Another way of doing this is, how do you turn a level or tier 2 tenant into a tier 1? Okay, so you may be getting calls from tier 2s, and ideally you'll want to get a tier 1 tenant, but they're tier 2s. That's what's calling you. So how do you take a tier 2 and turn them into a tier 1? And it could be done. You can work with them. So if they don't have all the security deposit, maybe you can do a payment plan. Maybe you can have a co-signer if their if their application is not strong or not the strongest. Maybe they have a family member who knows them, likes them, trusts them, and they'll co-sign for them. And as a result of that, you got the guarantor of a co-signer, and but then you have the a tenant in your property. So you're kind of sharing the risk, with the co-signer, rather than you taking on the entire risk. I've done that several times, and then you work with that tenant over time, and I found that if there's a co-signer, I've never had an issue when I've rented to a tenant who had a co-signer, because they don't want me to call the co-signer, and therefore they'll do the right thing. So that could be another strategy you may want to consider as well. Let's look at your other parts of the question. Let's have a look. I've been getting calls for a year. Yeah, I run background check. A lot of tenants don't pass the requirement. Okay, so background checks. What I found, especially when you deal with Section 8, is I have yet to find a tenant who's got AAA credit. Credit is usually not that great. Let's just put it that way. So looking at credit as a criteria for Section 8, you won't get anybody. And I'm okay with renting to tenants with bad credit with Section 8 because my rent, for the most part, the majority of the rent is covered by the housing authority, which has AAA credit. So therefore, the bulk of my money is coming through regardless. And therefore, the tenant's portion is just the remainder. So I'm a bit more flexible on the credit requirements. Now, obviously, my understanding of the Section 8 program, at least as it operates in the DC area, you cannot participate in the program if you have a criminal, a felony background, because they do a background check on you, and you can get terminated from the program, if you, violate some of those provisions of the program. So criminal background checks, there are criminals out there. It's going to have to be a case by case. What was the situation that happened? Was it something that was recent? Was that something that happened many years ago, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago? People change. People get older, get wiser, and they change. They did stuff when they were younger, which they probably regret, and so on. So you can work with people rather than just dismissing somebody because, they didn't have the greatest credit or because there's a ding in their background or whatever it is. And that's why I like to meet people face to face, talk to them, get to know them, give them the opportunity to explain what happened. And during those discussions, you may decide that, this person is somebody I can do business with. No, I'm not saying lower your standards and just take anybody. Let's be clear about that. It's better to have a place empty than to have the wrong person in there, believe me. But I'm just saying that you may want to revisit your criteria and to see if there's some flexibility that you can offer, because 12 months without a tenant is devastating. And you still got expenses for this property. And if it's vacant too long, people can break in. I'm not even too sure if your insurance will cover you if it's been vacant that long. So you may want to do another session if you want to, Nesta can. Book a one-on-one. Let's go through let's do a deep dive, and I'll see what I can do to offer you some suggestions. I know what I did. You have to offer these gimmicks. I have a timeshare, I think, in Virginia. I think at one time when I was getting no applications, I offered free vacations for people who applied to my property. You get these creative things. You can get some creative strategies in order to get people to come visit the property and hopefully make an application as well. So that's something that you may want to consider, Nesta can. But yeah, 12. I feel your pain, man. Hi, financial firefighter. Hey, how's it going, man? So got greetings from Hawaii, and Hawaii is in the house. Okay, let's have a look. When are we going to affiliate estates? That's an insider joke. Yeah, so I was on a podcast, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, I suppose, and Gus, I think. Yeah, Gus. Yeah, Gus was the host, and also had Mark, and they had a great conversation. Mark's in Hawaii, and Gus, I think, is in Maine or Vermont or something like that, and he has an estate. So so maybe one day I'll be able to go to his estate and check that out. And feel free to, I'd be more than happy to, what's it called? come back if maybe I'll do a session with both of you guys on my program, and we can shoot the breeze and talk about real estate. And I kind of reciprocate the welcome. It's good to every so often check in with other investors. Most of my podcasts are more educational. You know, I think there's a need for that. A lot of the podcasts that are out there they're good. There's a lot of good ones, but you know, they don't do a deep dive into some of the really important stuff. And it's just talking heads and sort of entertainment. And I'd rather have more substance and based on what I've learned that's been successful, as opposed to hype and rah and you too can do this and so on, which, you know, I'm not really a great fan of, and so on. So yeah, well, let's see what we can do, Mark and Gus. Dr. Joe, how do you deal with your properties once they become vacant? How do you maintain them and keep them secure until your next tenant is placed? Okay, that's a good question. So she got a follow-up question. When do you think it's perfect to handle your property? Okay, so let's do this first. So how do you deal with properties that become vacant? Well, the first thing is try not to get it to be vacant. So I try to focus on customer satisfaction so my tenants stay. And I check in with my tenants on a regular basis. And I have an assistant that her role is to make sure my tenants are happy. She meets with them twice a year, and to find out if there's any issues, any problems, any challenges they're experiencing. And so if there are things that come up to her attention, she brings it to my attention, and I try to address them before I get a 30-day notice. So so I try to be proactive in terms of making sure my tenants are happy, and so that way I don't have a vacancy. And right now, I'm averaging around 7.5 years for each of my tenants across my portfolio. What that means is that I just don't have the same turnover numbers that other people have, because I realize that turnover is very, very, very expensive. If you can't manage that, you make no money, period. You know, the cost of painting the place, cleaning the place, vacancies, no money coming in, you still got your mortgage to pay. It's crazy expensive. 2 to 3 months lost income minimum every time there's a vacancy. Okay, so with that said, that's the first strategy, is to try to get them to stay. Now, every so often my tenants do leave. I have one of my properties right now. She left. She was with me for a few years, but she decided in her wisdom she wanted to relocate to Florida. So there's nothing I can do about that. She wanted to get out of the DC area and go to Florida. So she left. And so obviously, what do? When the property becomes vacant, the first thing I do is to get my guys in there, clean it up, paint it up, do any repairs, and as soon as possible, such that we can get the place ready to start marketing again. So it's get your crew, get your turnover systems in place, so whereby you can get the place property ready and available to show. I'm very aggressive on the marketing. So I realize that every day that goes by, I'm losing money. So I need to turn that thing around as fast as possible. And I market heavily. I advertise on the local platforms here. Very, very aggressive. And with the goal of getting showings, I do open houses every day of the week. And, if someone calls me on Monday, hey, I'm showing the house tonight, Monday. Someone calls me on Tuesday, I'm showing the house on Tuesday. So I want them to come to my home, because I know that I'm in competition with other landlords for the same tier 1 tenants. So I try to differentiate my product from my competition. I market it in such a way that is different. I stage my home so it looks like a home, not just an empty house. When people call me, I'm very friendly, very warm, very welcoming, very open. I'm trying to sell them. I'm trying to get them to the property. Because my thing is that once they can get to the property, then I'm relying on the house to sell itself, because the house is nice. It's a good location. and I sell them on the fact that I'm a great landlord. Okay, so that's the first part. How do you deal with the properties? So it's aggressive marketing and aggressive showing the property and preparing the property, and then obviously I screen the properties. Screen the tenants once they fill the application, and so on. How do you maintain them and keep them secure until the next turn? That's a couple of things. You got a couple of choices depending on where the property is located. It can be a simple low. You could put just lock the doors. If there's ways to get into your property from the street, you may want to put a padlock on the front of the house and the back of the house. That prevents people coming in and out. Yeah, you could put a security system there, security cameras, and so that way you can keep track of who's going in and out of your property. And obviously, if you have a security system, you want to go into security monitoring as well, so you get notified whenever there's any activity at your property. So although you may not be present physically, you can see, you can monitor, you can track what's happening at the property later on. Now, I didn't used to do that. I did that about 4 years ago, I think it was, because I had a property that was vacant. It's kind of a crazy story. I was in Washington, D.C., and I went on vacation, came back, and there was a squatter that came into the property, believe it or not. They took residence in my property while I was on vacation for a couple of weeks. Crazy story. Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, I was able to turn that thing around, get the squatter out pretty quickly. We go to the police, and the police were able to arrest the person. The reason why they arrested them is because they'd broken through the window, and it was a break and entry. So because they were saying that they lived there, they said they had a lease, this squatter, and so I was able to prove that they did not have a lease and they were not invited guests, so they were arrested. But yeah, so since then I put security systems, and so you can have a security camera, so that way you can monitor what's happening. I use Simply Safe. I'm not plugging them, and but also T-Mobile has this sort of at least in this area, this wireless, they call it home internet, where you can get Wi-Fi to your home through T-Mobile, so that will then run the home security system as well. Okay, how do you maintain and keep them secure? So secure it through that. And so for the next part of the question, when do you think it's appropriate to hand your property over to property manager to manage the property? I find that man don't manage properties with Section 8 in them. That man. Okay. Managers. Okay. So when do you think it's appropriate to hand over your properties to? I think you can. I mean, my thing about property management companies. I haven't found one that's any good. They all promise you the world, but they don't deliver, and their agendas are always different. And so I just manage all my properties myself. That's what I do. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's what I do. I am very, very particular on who I rent to. So screening is the key, and to the point whereby I go to the people's home as part of the screening process. I do a home visit because I found that how somebody keeps their house today is how my house is going to be in 3 months. So you can't tell how they keep their home by how they dress, what their income is, how they look. It's got nothing to do with how they keep their home. The only way I found to find out how your house is going to be is to go to their home. So I don't know too many management companies that do the home visits, but that's the key. And so I'm very thorough on the screening, because I realized that a mistake there is a setup for disaster. Yeah, so I think you can do it yourself, but if you don't feel comfortable or don't want to do that, then obviously you need to screen and do your due diligence on the management companies, get some recommendations, get some referrals. I know a lot of management companies, as you say here, they don't they don't know, they don't deal with Section 8, or they're not familiar with Section 8. And Section 8 is a completely different animal. So there's a third party, which is called the Housing Authority, which is part of this thing. And most management companies just don't have experience working with them. And so so you may want to find a management company that is familiar with Section 8 and wherever you are. And they know how to manage Section 8 tenants. And what I found is that when dealing with Section 8, it's more on tenant management as opposed to property management, if that makes sense. I mean, stuff with the property, yeah, stuff goes wrong, electrical, plumbing, appliances, that's property. But the key to my success is the tenant management, not the property management, and having an understanding of the type of tenants that participate in the program, the different levels of Section 8 tenants, and my desire to have good working relationships with my tenants, because I have something that they want, which is a nice house, a nice area, and I'm a good landlord, and they've got something hopefully that I want, which is I want my rent to be paid, I want them to take care of my house, be pleasant to deal with, and hopefully stay a long time. So I try to create a win-win scenario where it's in my best interest that their interests are addressed, and it's in their interest that my interests are addressed. So we kind of have a good understanding. And that's how I get 5, 10, 15, 20-year relationships. When Mother's Day, I give them Mother's Day gifts, Christmas gifts, I give them Christmas presents and things like that. So I don't know too many management companies that do that. But you may want to find one, get some referrals where you are, and hopefully you can find a management company that can take on something that if you don't want to take it on. Okay, because a lot of them do not, as you said, do not have experience with Section 8. That's a great retention value. Any money I made over the last few years in cash flow has already been eaten up by vacancies and making the house ready. Yep, for the next. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of landlords don't understand the devastating impact of vacancies. Especially if you're in the single family arena, because in a multi-family, you can kind of spread, you still got income from other units, but with a house, it's either occupied or not. And if it's not, then there's no income coming through. So it can be very, very expensive. That's the reason why I focus more on, relationship management, tenant satisfaction, than trying to, focus on maximizing rent and things like that. Because if you can minimize expenses, then you can make your profit goals. But too many landlords focus on the income side. How do I increase the rents? $100, $50, $200, whatever it is, when in fact each turnover is going to cost you $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and so on. So anyway, so I think we're done for today. It's 8 o'clock. And so hopefully this is a good session for you, everybody. And I will, as I said before, I'm going to be away next week on vacation. And this will be my fourth or fifth trip, I think. I still got, my goal is to get 6 countries a year. So I'm going to meet that goal. And yeah, looking forward to it. Have a little break. And so I'll see everybody in about a couple of weeks' time, God willing. And have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. And I said, do I have any questions on Instagram? I've got quite a few people on Instagram joined. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. It's 8 o'clock. Have yourself a wonderful evening. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Take care. Bye for now.